Hey, everybody, welcome to my guest tonight. I'm your host, Jeff Revilla. I've got a great guest joining me today, north of the border, a Canadian horror author, podcaster, teacher. We're bridging the journey of education, psychology, and the macabre.
In the shadows of the classroom, light she writes where fear and truth unite. From Black Rock High to Tales Untold, where monsters teach us to be bold. It's my guest tonight, Jeff Revilla's stage, and Ashe Woodward's here to set the pace. So dim those lights and hold on tight. We're finding hope in the dark tonight.
That is so good. Thank you.
Ashe Woodward, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you liked your theme song.
Thank you. That was awesome. So awesome. It's going to be stuck in my head. Oh my goodness.
I'll send you a copy. A lot of people want to reuse it later on or for their
Can I?
entrance, like if they're speaking at a conference.
Or
they just want to
walking into the WWE. Yeah, that's what I'm going to use.
Every speaker should have a walk-on song. That's right.
Yeah, that was excellent. Thank you. Great job.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm so glad to have you here tonight. And as you know, this is kind of an origin stories podcast. We like to go back to see who you were, to kind of figure out who you became. And we like to connect the dots through that historical line. And I was reading a little bit about you. You loved scary stories, horror stories when you were a child. Was it kind of a passion, something you were drawn to very early on?
It was something I was forced into. I think my dad showed me scary movies when I was probably much too young. But, that was during a time when you just went to the video store and you picked up something that was new and you didn't really know, it can't be that scary. I'm sure it's fine. Let's just put her in front of the TV and see what happens. So I think that was more what happened. And then just eventually being a child in the 80s, it was like kind of everywhere, like spooky puppets and camp and then cheesy horror movies were just kind of everywhere. It's kind of how I remember it. Maybe that's wrong. But then when Beetlejuice came out, that was like 1988, and I fell in love. Then I was like, I love Beetlejuice. I want to be Lydia when I grow up. And that was the one.
Yeah, that Beetlejuice was a game changer in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I try to explain to my daughters, you would go to the video store in the 80s and you might get 4 movies, maybe 5 if you were lucky.
If you're rich, 5.
Yeah, 5.
With the Rockefellers, I got 2.
Okay, you might get, but that's all you had the whole weekend.
That is all you get.
Yeah, there wasn't anything else to watch until Monday when you returned them, and then maybe you would get 2 more.
Yeah. Exactly. And then I always tell the story too. When I was a teenager, I lived across the street from a video store. So it'd be like, you're with your friends. What have you got? $20. Okay. Rent a movie is like maybe $5. You can get 2 for $5, or you can dive into the bargain bin where like those B movies and weird movies nobody's ever heard of are $1 each. And then you can get 5 movies. So we would do that, and then we'd have money for snacks. So that's how I kind of got into, exposed to different horror movies and weird movies that nobody else had heard of.
I should have clarified. We weren't allowed to shop the perimeter. We had to go into the aisles and get the twofers.
Oh yeah, you can't have the new ones. Those are the expensive. Then you don't get any. Yeah, then you're only going to get 1 for sure.
So Beetlejuice and other movies, was there something about those that obviously Lydia is an iconic character and a lot of people related to her and her emotions in that movie. Were there other characters or other things that drew you in to that genre?
I mean, I'm trying to think. I guess with Beetlejuice, it was really visual, right? Like Tim Burton had also done Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and I was a huge Pee-wee Herman fan. And so, from Pee-wee's Playhouse, that like puppetry, the colors, and then the stop motion, which was also a part of Pee-wee's Playhouse, and then Tim Burton does that later, and that's a big part of Beetlejuice. I think that was always just interesting to me. Like, how is that happening? How did they make things move in that kind of animation? That style was really intriguing.
And that interest, did you start thinking of your own stories or developing your own worlds when you were very young and start putting that to paper?
No, maybe not to paper. Yeah, definitely I was living in my own world, that's for sure. I always tell the story. Like, I remember writing stories on a Commodore 64, if people know what that is, but there was no word processor. So I would sit and I used to pretend like practicing typing. I loved practicing typing. I thought it was so sexy. Like, my grandmother was like a secretary. She could type so fast. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to type so fast. So I'd practice typing and I'd make up these stories. But like I said, there was no word processor. So I'd always have to sit there and like delete my stories afterwards. So no, I don't think I got anything to paper unless it was for school, unfortunately.
And with school, you graduate high school, you go on to college, and you start studying. Do you study literature, or at some point you decide that teaching or maybe being an English teacher is in your future? What kind of led you down that path?
um, lack of options. I mean, I I don't think I ever really knew what I wanted to be, except like, yeah, I guess I could be a teacher. Like that just it felt so easy. Um, I didn't really. I went to school, yes, for literature, but that still doesn't give you a good idea of what you're going to be in the future. Like, there's professor, sure, or like poet. I don't think so. So I was working at a car factory, and somebody happened to mention that her sister was teaching English abroad. I was like, I could do that, and I get a free trip to Mexico. Okay, where do I sign up? So I did, and then I well, it wasn't that quick. I studied for like a year. I had to get a degree in teaching ESL, English as a second language. Lived in Mexico, taught English there. And then when I came back, I continued just being an English teacher here in private schools.
And during that time, you get to develop your own curriculum. Do you get to choose the reading materials? Is there anything that you lean more towards while you're instructing young minds?
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble. But yeah, I mean, especially when I was teaching high school, that was a total different ballgame. Choosing short stories. There's something about like teenagers love dystopia. Like they're really intrigued by like, what's the worst what's the worst we can get ourselves into as humanity, and let's see like that hero character prevail, right? Like teenagers really latch on to those things. So I mean, dystopia is horror adjacent. So I would really kind of, try and push the envelope just a little bit and get them interested that way.
Do you think like young minds are so they believe that the world can change, and they're the agent of change, and they see the world much different than I do at 50 years old. At 14 or 15, little punk rock Jeff was like, I'm going to change a lot of things. And
Yeah.
is that maybe what draws, or just in your opinion, what kind of draws teenagers to that dystopian world is, hey, that's a place of change. I'm
Mhm.
thinking about rebelling and creating something new. I wonder if there's a connection between those two.
Oh yeah, I definitely, especially like you said, rebelling. Like that's where teenagers are. They're like, no, we don't want any of this stuff that you've already created. We want to break it all down and smash the system, and then see what we can do because they still have that Superman complex that they can do anything, right? And that's great. That's what we need them for. That's what they're supposed to be, idealistic and want to change the world and fix our problems and have ideas and be innovative because we need them to be, because, we didn't do such a good job, especially this time.
And as you're teaching these young minds, as you're seeing the way they perceive the world, as you're developing your own curriculum, is this where you start thinking of building your own worlds and writing your own stories? And uh,
Um, sort of. I think it was more before because when I was still working in Toronto, um and then I had a couple major people in my family pass away. It was kind of one of those like, oh, I've always told myself I'm a writer, but I've never written a book. And now I've seen two people like pass away, and I'm like kind of affected by the passing of time. I think it's time to get on it because I was actually asking myself, I'm like, okay, you keep thinking in your head you're a writer, but I've written poetry and I've written short stories, but nothing published, and I'd never written a full length book. I was like, you better put your money where your mouth is. Let's see if you can actually do this, because if not, you got to get this dream out of your head. So I sat down for 3 months every single morning and wrote Black Rock High. And so, okay, like it wasn't, I didn't even plan on publishing it. I just wanted to see if I could finish like 80,000 words, 90,000 words. Like, could I even do that? And then I could. And then it was like, oh, this isn't so bad. Maybe I will publish this. Let's see what happens. So that's kind of how it went.
Did you draw anything from your teaching profession and put into Black Rock High? Are there any connections between, maybe some of the characters you might have met along the way?
I think it's more from when I was in high school, actually, rather than my students. Yeah, it's more characters. Actually, I think it's more 4 different aspects of my own personality from being in high school. Like, each year I was kind of, well, one year I was a little more rebellious. One year I was a little bit more sporty. And the next year I was a little more thoughtful and to myself, and that's kind of how it manifested. The reason I wrote Black Rock High like that was because I wanted to make it easy. I was trying to write something and see, can I write this? Okay, let's just make it easy on myself. What would be something I know how to write? Characters I would know is me, right? So I just tried to make it as simple as possible for my first one.
Did you have a process? Did you have to figure out how to write, or did you just sit down and it came out? Because some authors I've interviewed, this book was in them, and it just came to page right away. And other authors had to develop process or structure or designate writing time. Was it a little easier to write the first book? Was it already within you, or did you have to kind of suss it out?
Kind of all of that, really, because I was kind of going from like the seat of my pants. I'm definitely like in the writing world, there are things we call planners and pantsers. I'm a pantser, which means I go by the seat of my pants. Like I think I've got the first line. I'm just going to write. I will edit later. And what I kind of did in that case was that I just wrote until I couldn't write anymore. And then I went back and said, ooh, I forgot, what this detail was. And now I need it again. I'm like, oh, now I need to plan it all out and I need to write notes and I need to go back. And that's fine. I kind of actually like that. That's fine. I get to go back and edit, but I didn't really have a process. I didn't really know what I was doing besides get up before work and write. That was one thing because that was going to be the only time I had. And make myself do this because I wanted it. It was something that I had always wanted to do, was see if I could write a book.
And that was the challenge to yourself.
Yeah.
Can I accomplish this? I say I'm a writer, but how can I actually do it?
Yeah.
And that was your first book. And then was the second book, The Cemetery for Zoe?
Cemetery for Zoe. Yeah. Yeah. That one was more what you were saying. Like it just came out of me. Zoe was literally like the book starts with her digging graves. She digs graves with her hands because she's a monster. So she was digging graves at a cemetery. And I just it was December of that year. I just remember every night I went to sleep, all I could see and hear was just this, digging in the ground. I'm like, what is this story? I'm like, okay, I get it. She's a monster. She's in a cemetery. Where is this going? I'm like, okay, I finally have to answer this, or this is just going to keep me up all the time. So that one came out a little bit more almost fully formed. It was I kind of saw how that was going pretty easily.
And the podcast, or not the podcast, yeah, that's my follow-up question here, but these 2 books, right, they lead to this surge of creativity, which these things are you're creative, these are coming out of you, you're telling these stories, and the podcast, that's so morbid. Is that kind of a continuation of this genre of the storytelling?
This is going to take us off course. Okay, so while I was teaching, I also had my own business and I was helping entrepreneurs get started. So I was helping them set up websites and find their branding and that kind of stuff. And I held all these events in Toronto, and my company was called YOLO Palooza. And the whole kind of tagline was, YOLO, do it before you die, which is obviously you can see there's a through line here, right? Time is limited. If you want this business, if this is your dream, I will help you do it. And with that business, I started a podcast, and it was called That's So YOLO. And I started doing that podcast, talking to entrepreneurs and people who were starting businesses. And then I realized I want to do also a shadow self of this podcast. I want to do something that's also the dark side of all of this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do a sister podcast called That's So morbid. And I had a partner that wanted to be part of it, and we started that. And it was just exploring. It was exploring a lot of the things that, it was connected to my novel writing, because I was doing all this research that I had nothing to do with. Like, I couldn't put this nonfiction stuff into my fiction. It just came up in my research, right? And I was like, I found out these wild things about Mary Shelley when I was looking this up. I have to tell somebody. I'll start a podcast, and that's kind of how that one worked. And then when I lost my co-host, he went back to video game graphics. I was like on my own. I didn't know if I would continue. And when I decided to, it was like, well, I got to make this more me, which was more the analytical, scholarly side of horror. So then I developed the Spooky Scholars.
And with the Spooky Scholars, and there's this theme, and a very important part of some of your messaging, some of the things that you tie together, and very big on inclusivity, on making sure everybody is represented through in storytelling, in the creators of the people the authors, the storytelling. And tell us a little bit more about your philosophy. And I was kind of trying to tie this in. I didn't mean to jump ahead so far into the podcast, but tying all this in and really making sure that we touch on inclusivity.
Well, I think that just comes along with horror. Like, horror is so inclusive, so it just makes sense that, it's a genre that speaks to everyone. We all have fears. And, horror has a history of also including, especially the outsiders. So when you're talking about inclusivity, it's usually you're talking about the people who don't usually get noticed or don't usually get included. And that's what horror does. It includes the other, it includes like the underdog, it includes the strange and the unusual. So that's a big part of it. I think my philosophy, you were saying too, like when you were a young punk kid, I was a punk kid and into punk rock, and those philosophies were instilled pretty early that, we stick together and everyone's invited.
As behind me, I have a theater, and it's funny. I still like the core concept of the theater is the Gilman Street rules. I don't know if you're familiar with Gilman Street in San Francisco. It was like, So you have to you better follow those rules. I don't have them posted, but I do have the Gilman Street rules are our guiding principle.
Oh, cool.
That's a real meta. Not everybody listening to that is going to get that. But look up the Gilman Street. I think it's 814 Gilman Streit. I might get the number wrong. Just look up Gilman Street punk show rules. So, and one of the things you believe is that we have these stories, and the trauma can heal. It's also a healing property. You're able to put people in these situations, but through that trauma, the part of the storytelling is healing and coming out on the other end.
Yeah. It seems really counterintuitive, right? Like that. I mean, one of the studies that's often done, and a lot of research has been gone into this, is that horror movies are cathartic for people. They speak to people that tend to have more anxiety already, which again, that seems bonkers. It seems like the opposite. Why would anxious people want to watch a movie that makes you anxious? But, excuse me, you've got to think that watching a horror movie is like a safe space. We know that this is fiction. We're going to be scared for the moment, and then it's over. We also get to see how the situation is managed. So that might give you like thoughts on, oh, okay, I can do this. Especially with Final Girls, it's very empowering for women to see a woman come out at the end and be the survivor. I don't know if we connected before or after this happened, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead in your notes, but my Substack is about that. How do I say this? My Substack is about political headlines that I match with horror movies, but I recently had the opportunity to turn that into a radio show. So my radio show, Horror Helpline, is a call-in show where people call in, they tell me their problems, and then I match their problems to horror movies. So, yeah, I guess that's my thing. I can't explain, I guess, more than that how it works, but it does.
And you also do public classes and online classes as well. Are you tying in these themes with the horror genre and writing and creating and and bringing the community together, even helping people with their healing.
I mean, I try to. I mean, horror is bound to come up, so I'm always gonna refer to it. I'm always gonna recommend it. And really just saying that, have you ever watched a horror movie and just to see, oh no, I could never do that. I'm like, well, here's some recommendations. Why don't you try this? Some people find it cathartic. Some people find it actually like it's a release once you've like held yourself so tight and like watched in fear and made it through. A lot of people are like, oh, okay, like they kind of feel stronger. They almost feel like a confidence boost because of it. So yeah, it's just always bound to come up.
So you got the podcast, the radio show, some books, you're doing classes. You have all these things in place now. Where do you see this going in 2 years or 5 years? Are there more books on the way or still within you? Or do you see yourself maybe going on the conferences and speaking and getting on the speaking circuits?
Yeah, I mean, there's always books on the way. Don't worry. The next book that I have coming out, though, it's a nonfiction. I did a chapter for an anthology that was an essay on the Flatliners universe. That comes out in November. But yeah, I think it's doing the podcast. I have to make it through this 15 weeks of the radio show, which is what I'm committed to. And it's been a lot of work. Like when you list all the things that I'm doing, like, oh man, I am doing maybe too much. But yeah, I think it is really just to be a voice in horror. I want to be part of the conversation. I think horror hasn't gotten the love that it deserves, but it's such a powerful genre as far as like trauma, as I'm saying, but also inclusivity and also fear. Like everybody is afraid of something. And, I've been doing a lot of work lately thinking about how almost every story is a horror story. like I know it's not. I know there is comedy. I'm not delusional, but when you think about all of the stories and the way that humans put story together, and you have a hero that's faced with a challenge, and think of, I don't know, you can think about the most charming story, like The Little Mermaid, and be like, well, yeah, that's a charming little kid story, but also she's faced with a big decision. There's a sea witch that takes her voice. You put different music on that movie, and it's a horror movie very easily. And these are what we did initially intend story to be, which was a cautionary tale, which was to share stories with each other, to connect, to survive, to warn each other, to grow. So I think, yeah, I just want to be more part of that conversation where horror is going, because it needs to, I think, still do a better job of showing people that it's not the cheesy, cheap genre that people once thought it was, that there's a lot more to say here.
Yeah, the storylines in horror are so complex, and there's so many backstories that the backstories can be anything that lead to some sort of event. And that's what's so great about the genre is it's really wide open until these different areas cross that one path that really explodes the story open. And just so much fun to work with that and to hear the stories about it. And you mentioned the radio show. For those of people listening, does it rebroadcast online at all? Or is there any way for people around the world to listen to it?
Yeah. So it is, of course, it is local to me in public radio, but you can go to trentradio.ca, and it's on Saturday nights at 10 p.m.
Awesome. And the podcast is That's So Morbid. And the best
Spooky Scholars now.
I'm sorry, Spooky Scholars.
Mm-hmm.
The Spooky Scholars. I'll have links to all these in the show notes. And the 2 books, are they available everywhere you get your books?
They are. Yep. Black Rock High and A Cemetery for Zoe. And Black Rock High, the second part of the series, was hopefully coming out the end of next year.
Oh, very good. Very good. We'll put that in the show notes. And the best way, if people want to check out everything, do you have just a personal website that you like to send people to?
I make it nice and easy. There's a little tree there. Just go to ashewoodward.com. My name is spelled ASHE Woodward.com. And you can go to all of the things I do, including the podcast, the books, and even if you need me for my day job, which is just regular writing.
All the things. Ashe, thank you so much for joining us today. This was so much fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Let's go back to that theme song.
In the shadows of the classroom light, she writes where fear and truth unite. From Black Rock High to Tales Untold, where monsters teach us to be bold. It's my guess.